Steve Metz here, and I wanted to go over just more inert forms of sealing the board. And so here's a what I was talking about, over tightening. Now I am going to say this too, and I want to just address this because yeah, I'm aware there's water resistance and there's waterproofing. I just use the term waterproofing because it's kind of an old school term. I don't mean taking your board, putting it in your pool for a year and then trying to ride your board. I'm talking about when it's raining, keeping water out of the electrical areas and things like that. If you're taking your board in the pool, could I build a skateboard that I could put in the pool and get the motor running, take it out, and it would still work? I could, but would I do that? No way, man. It's not what a board's intended for. In that case, it would be a lot of work, and it would be like building those like underwater submarine cameras, and those are the engineering that goes into that is just not what I'm talking about. It's talking really about being able to ride in the rain. Okay. And the reason this is important is because some people use their boards for transportation, well, and they don't have the money to buy a car or something, or they don't have money for the bus or metro. They can actually use these techniques. Okay. Over tightening. This is actually open cell foam. I recommend closed cell foam. You can get closed cell foam or rubber. This is actually 1/8 inch thick rubber. This stuff is great, gaskets. But over time, this stuff does age, crack, and dry out. It loses its ability, which is why I would put flange dressing in between the two connection points for the winter at least. That's what I was talking about earlier. You could also put silicone or something else or butyl rubber if you wanted to, but again, the more glue you use, the harder it is to get back into your board. Over tightening is this on your battery box. What I mean by this is I'll get a board sometimes from a factory. There's all kinds of issues with board building right now, but I just mean here, they tighten down, the screws go through here and they over tighten them with heat cycles, meaning day and night, you have people doing, let's say, 10 miles a day on their board. When they're outside riding in California, at least, it can get 110 degrees. And then at night, it's like 65. That's a huge difference as far as these plastics and what they can handle. So when a board does heat cycles, and even just time itself will cause these things to permanently stay bowed. Now, it looks like I'm pushing them together. I'm not. I'm just pushing down. And it may not be showing up on camera because of the angle, but there's space here. It's about thickness of a dime, about 1 millimeter. If you over tighten, now another technique, which I'll get into, but if you over tighten, you're going to cause more of this. You want it just to be snug. You don't want it cranked down with all the strength, the twisting strength of a human hand, or gripping strength at least, could be around 100 pounds depending on the person. That's way more than this needs. As you can see, I mean, even 10 pounds of force down is going to cause a seal. Okay, you could take a piece of metal and put the metal in between, so you have the screw going through the metal. It's like a little plate, let's say 1/2 inch wide, 10 gauge steel, whatever. Drill it out. You go screw through the metal, and it kind of acts as a long, like a ruler, clamping it all down into place. That'll give you a better seal. Okay, so screw through metal, through the plastic battery box, through the closed cell foam and the various other sealants, and then into the board or through the board, clamping down. That's a great way to also assist in getting a proper seal through most of your board, which I would recommend. For people that are arguing, oh, of course you can ride in the rain, it's fine on most boards, the motors will be fine. No, it's not. Can you do it? Yes, you can, if in a pinch. And have I done it? I have, actually, but for very short amounts of time. I really try not to ride in the rain. But this is what happens. I don't know if it's doing it justice, but it's all rusted in there. I don't even think this motor did run still, but it wouldn't have lasted. This was not maintained by me either. I would clean this out. Let's say if I was riding in the rain a lot, I'd probably take these apart every 2 months, clean them out with silicone spray, because silicone doesn't conduct electricity. It doesn't really interact with the plastics. So I would actually just clean that all out and then probably repack the bearings, as I mentioned in my previous video. Other forms, I'm going to continue on. Other forms of inert sealing. O-rings. So this is a box of O-rings, like, I don't know, 20 bucks or something. There's a bunch of these little O-rings in here, and they come in all sizes. You can take a small O-ring, and where your screws that go into your top of your board and your battery box, or through your board for that matter, you can seal off those areas where, like, you drill out the board to put your battery box on. You seal that all up with crazy glue, right? Regular crazy glue. It's super thin. It permeates that wood part. Then you sand down where the top of the bolt is. So just for illustration, and I did do this on this board, oddly enough, and this is one of the older boards, actually. So I'm talking about here, when I drilled this out, right? I drilled these out, actually. So I drilled these out. I'll put a little crazy glue in there, let it dry, and then I'll sand it down. I'll go all the way, so the glue goes all the way down and permeates all 7 layers of maple. And so what happens then is you've got a super strong structure of wood there. You also have a good way to seal off your, so then you've got your washer and your screw head, and that goes down and clamps down on this. If you want to get crazy, you could put butyl rubber or Joe's sticky stuff also, if you want to go, triple protection. It is possible that when you're riding and you're not aware of it, but accidentally your bolts get a little loose and you start to get that play, and water could theoretically get down through your bolt, through your screw, head holes. And if that happens, you might get water into your units, and you're not going to know where that came from. That's why every single point is important when it comes to waterproofing. Again, I'm going to use it. I know it upsets people, and I actually don't mind, man. It's kind of funny to me that even people talk to me about, oh, it's not waterproof. It's not waterproof. As a matter of fact, some of these techniques you could, if you did it correctly, you could dunk your board underwater and take it out and it would still run. The motor on this board is actually a bilge pump motor. It is waterproof. It's built to be submerged in water. So it is possible, just not recommended. I get it. Yeah, it's, nothing lasts forever. Ultimately, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. You're gonna have to maintain a waterborne board, okay, if it goes in the rain. Okay, so that's another one. I think I talked about grommets already, but I would seal grommets up with this, Devin, where your wires go through and into the battery box, so from the motor through your grommet into the battery box. Most boards are built like that. In that particular case, I would still seal them up. Inspect your factory boards. They're put together rapidly and they're built like toys. They're not built like vehicles, which I'm more used to working on cars and motorcycles. They're built in some cases, way better than most skateboards. Not all of them. There are a few boards that are built pretty well, but for the most part, they're built like toys. So grommets, both inside and outside. I'm not going to get too much with the interior. The JSTs, I do seal them off either with this or with silicone. It's a little easier to pop them out and get the silicone glue off of JSTs that are, for instance, your hall sensor wires and stuff that are clamped into those the little plugs. Those are actually not waterproof, and if you get water in there or corrosion, that could be an issue. So I would seal those off. Silicone, I would just use our regular silicone. When I talk about silicone, there's 3 different kinds. There's silicone grease, there's silicone oil type spray, it's silicone, but it's really thin. And then you have silicone glue. And in this case, there's silicone, they call it adhesive. I don't like that term, but I'll just call it silicone sealant adhesive. It's kind of a mix. It's like an enduro, it can ride off-road, it can ride on the street, right? Is it good at both? It's okay at both. And same thing with silicone. If I'm using glue, I'm probably using this, or I'm using, for really I want to adhere something, I'm using epoxies. And that's a whole other video. All right, so inert. So I covered rubber. This is one of my favorite things, which I didn't talk too much about yesterday in my other video. Closed cell foam, make sure it's closed cell. Use dressing. I would use the Hylamar flange dressing. Anything, really, it could be anything that is not going to interact with the plastics and the rubbers, because some things will eat away rubber. For instance, oil-based stuff can eat away at rubber, and that's not a good thing. You definitely don't, you want to make sure, that's why I say in here even silicone is better, because the glues and the rubber and probably urethane that's in here, it's not good to really put oil